Louisville continues to burn as we go along through the week, but the media seems to lose focus on anything with it. The fight for the Supreme Court continues, along with a HuffPo author who is turning to the Church of Satan. Several ballots are found in a ditch on the side of the road in swing state of Pennsylvania. Guess who they're all voting for? And sources on the Mueller team were against Trump right from the beginning. I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Good morning, folks, and welcome to Contemporary. My name is Jay Edgar. It never amazes me that some people can't see past their own argument because, I got into it a little bit with Nick Sarwark. Well, I'm waiting for him to respond off of this one, but I think he's got way too many responses to get down to my lowly 1,600 Twitter following, but I got a lot of explaining to do as well, saying, hey, you know what? If somebody on your side does something, then maybe you shouldn't call attention to it. No, Nick, that's not how this works. You should absolutely be calling attention to it and actually make the argument because, if the person you support can't argue with you, who actually supports him, how does he expect to stand up against somebody who's against him, who isn't going to pull any punches? So, that was my little bit of my morning here. We will see if there's actually a response to that once we get off the air. But before we get off the air, we've got a bunch of stuff to get to. And before we get to that, head on over to freedomscoop.com. Freedomscoop.com is going to be your one-stop shop for all of your news and commentary needs. We carry great shows such as The Daily Ignoramus, The Generational Gap. Join them tonight for their 100th episode. Make sure you're there and check them out and hang out with them. I'm sure they're looking forward to it, so I'm looking forward to it. And depending on when I get out of work, I actually might be there for it, so watch for that. You can also check out The Breakdown with Birkenhoff, The Already Conservative, and The Freckles and Brit Show. Check out The Freckles and Brit Show. Looks like they're going to be doing a live stream for the debates, which I'm also hoping to attend at some point there. So, a lot of good stuff going on the website. A lot of growth going on. Coming over there and check all of us out over there. Pick up some of our swag and help us support great creators. All right, let's get into the stock news from Google's front page. The Dow Jones went up just a tiny little bit, 0.2%, coming up 52 points. It stayed up for most of the day, up to 27,084.67 was the peak throughout the day, but, a little bit of a win is a little bit of a win. We'll keep watching this here. Some of the investors are saying this looks like we may be going into another bull. I don't know. That's what they're saying, the signs say. We will see as we go along. Let's see what the investors have to say. From Investors Business Daily, Dow Jones futures fall. Look for this bullish stock market signal. Tech titans hold key support from Ed Carson. Dow Jones futures fell modestly early Friday along with S&P 500 futures, but both paired losses as Nasdaq futures moved slightly higher. A new stock market rally attempt closed Thursday with modest gains after a wild session, but a key bullish signal could come soon. Tesla and several other leaders held key support levels. Costco Wholesale reported earnings late. Costco stock fell in extended trading after it reported mixed results. Shares had closed up slightly after finding support at the 50-day moving average intraday. Tesla stock also rebounded from an early move below its 50-day moving average and 10-week line. Nvidia bounced from its 10-week line. Adobe, ServiceNow, Alibaba, Viva Systems, and Chipotle Mexican Grill also found support at one or both of these key levels, but they all closed slightly lower. It's always so weird because we're talking Nvidia, Adobe, ServiceNow, some Chinese tech company, Viva Systems, and then, Chipotle. I haven't been to Chipotle in forever. I don't even know where it is in town where I go. I know where the Qdoba is. I had some of those on Saturday, but Chipotle? I gotta think about where that is. I wouldn't mind having some of that again here in the near future, but I gotta think about where it actually is. Meanwhile, Apple, Amazon, Microsoft had modest gains, but those $3 trillion tech titans all remain below their 50-day lines. The stock market opened lower with Tesla and several tech leaders extending Wednesday's losses. The Nasdaq fell as much as 1.1% but held just above its Monday low, less 1 point. The tech-heavy index quickly moved higher, advancing nearly 1.6% before giving up nearly all those gains. IBD moved to a stock market correction reading on Wednesday given the action of the major indices and leading stocks. However, the Nasdaq is on day 4 of a stock market rally attempt, starting with the pink rally day on Monday when the tech-heavy index hit recent lows but closed near session highs. That means a follow-through day to confirm a new rally could happen any day on the Nasdaq, assuming it doesn't undercut Monday's lows. The Dow Jones and S&P 500 are only on day 1 of a rally attempt because they did undercut Monday's low on Thursday before rebounding higher. That is a lot of words and a mouthful of technical jargon. Tesla, Nvidia, Adobe, ServiceNow, and Chipotle stock are on the IBD leaderboard. Adobe stock, ServiceNow, Alibaba, and Microsoft are on long-term leaders, with Viva on the watch list. Nvidia, Viva, Adobe, Amazon, and Alibaba are on the IBD 50. Dow Jones futures fell 0.3% versus fair value, well off morning lows. S&P 500 futures retreated 0.2%. Nasdaq 100 futures moved higher, up 0.25%. But a modest Dow Jones futures gain doesn't seem that meaningful compared to the up and down market gyrations Thursday and recent days. Remember, overnight action in Dow futures and elsewhere doesn't necessarily translate into actual trading in the next regular stock market session. So that's what we're going to see up off the markets. Hopefully we'll see a little bit of a gain coming up here. I'm not sure where that's going to land, but with any luck, we will see some sort of gain coming off of this. Let's see what CNBC has to say, and we will move into the Louisville news. From CNBC, stocks eke out small gains after wild session. Apple leads tech higher, from Fred Imbert and Pippa Stevens. Stocks rose slightly on Thursday as tech shares recovered some of their recent losses while traders weighed in the latest batch of economic data. The Dow Jones Industrial Average closed 52.31 points higher, or 0.2%, at 26,815.44. At its session low, the Dow was down 226 points. Well, at its session high, it was up 226 points. They don't want to tell you that. The 30-stock Dow was also up more than 300 points earlier in the day. I retract what I just said. The S&P 500 climbed 0.3% to 3246.59, and the Nasdaq Composite advanced 0.4% to 10672.27. Apple and Microsoft shares rose 1% and 1.3% respectively to lead tech higher. Alphabet shares gained nearly 1%, and Amazon advanced 0.7%. Netflix was up 0.5%, and Facebook advanced 0.25%. Market sentiment was kept in check, however, as the first-time claims for state unemployment benefits totaled 870,000 for the week ended on September 19th. That's more than a Dow Jones estimate of 850,000. Continuing claims, which include those who have received unemployment benefits for at least 2 straight weeks, declined slightly but were still higher than forecast. Claims, arguably the most important high-frequency data point, currently missed expectations and moved up week over week. Evercore ISI strategist Dennis Deboucher said in a note on Tuesday, with the Fed diminishing its own credibility by continually emphasizing the ineffectiveness of monetary policy and begging for fiscal support, weaker data will have big impact on risk assets, especially if the fiscal cliff starts to bite, which some indicators suggest might be starting. So it looks like they're looking for a rally, but they're unwary about it. The jobless claims, I should say, are up. The continuings are dropping slightly, so we will see what happens with this. Hopefully, we will see more unemployment drops as we go forward, but I don't know. This is going into an election year and doing anything that they can to try and tip the scales in their favor, especially if they can keep a state shut down. This is going to be a messy one, guys, and we are 39 days away. Let's get into the news on the protests, starting with the New York Post. Louisville protests continue in the wake of Breonna Taylor decision, from Jorge Fitzgibbon. Protesters took to the streets in Louisville for the second night of unrest in the Kentucky City Thursday, as demonstrators confronted armed militia members in the wake of a grand jury decision to clear cops in the shooting death of Breonna Taylor, according to reports. Police formed a perimeter around nearly 100 protesters who sought refuge at the First Unitarian Church, with at least 50 demonstrators trapped in the courtyard as police moved in, and at least 20 others inside the sanctuary, the Courier-Journal reported. Among those arrested in the night was Kentucky State Rep. Attica Scott, the state lawmaker who co-authored Breonna's Law, a police reform bill that bans no-knock search warrants similar to the one executed when Taylor was shot. March 13th, Ryan Van Belzer, a reporter for WFPL News in Louisville, said on Twitter, "Yeah, we'll be touching on that one a little bit more in depth by itself. And the church thing we'll be touching on in depth by itself." Police also arrested protesters elsewhere in downtown Louisville, including one man who spit at officers as he was handcuffed and pinned down by cops, the Courier-Journal said. The crowds, chanting Breonna Taylor, marched through the city in spite of a curfew that went into effect after a grand jury on Wednesday announced that 3 cops who had shot the 26-year-old EMT had not been charged in her death. Yeah, you really think that curfew was going to fucking do something? You really think for a second that that curfew was going to slow anybody down off of this? You are out of your damned mind. One since-fired officer, Brett Hankison, was charged with 3 counts of wantonly firing his gun, with bullets going into a neighboring apartment. Taylor's mother, Tamika Palmer, who has not spoken publicly since the decision was announced, made a brief appearance at Jefferson Square earlier in the night. Palmer stopped at a memorial for her daughter, wearing a black satin jacket that read "Until Freedom" over a t-shirt with a picture of State Attorney General Daniel Cameron. Okay then. It was Cameron who presented the case to the grand jury and announced the outcome on Wednesday. "It's crazy," she told the Courier-Journal. "The love is still here. It doesn't end here," she said. "People need to get out and vote. Voting is going to get the change we need. Protesting is nothing if we don't take to the polls." Protesters also came face to face with armed militia groups that made their way into the city earlier in the day. The militia members, dressed in camouflage and armed, including members of a group called the Oath Keepers. The group, identified by the SPLC, is one of the largest radical anti-government groups in the U.S. Yes, and the SPLC also thinks that I'm a virulent racist that goes hunting black people. So that'll give you an idea of how much shit they have on the fucking shelf. No violence between the two groups was reported early in the night. Police said 127 people were arrested on Wednesday, prompting city officials to extend a 9 p.m. to 6:30 a.m. curfew through the weekend. Yeah, the police are coming in and doing the crackdown, so that's part of the reason that we didn't really see a lot of stories for this morning when most of us opened up our headlines. I actually, for the most part, everything was buried in this investigation that the Mueller team is going through and more Supreme Court stuff, so they don't want to keep reporting on this because it might look bad for Joe Biden. But also keeping in mind that the militia groups are popping in and forming up and holding the city, just like they did in Kenosha. And I'm pretty sure at this point, the protesters know, or the rioters, I should say, know that if they fuck around, the militia groups are going to shoot back, even if it is some 17-year-old kid. All right. With that, let's keep going from the Blaze. Democratic Kentucky state lawmaker arrested during unrest in Louisville and charged with rioting. From Carlos Garcia, police arrested numerous protesters in the unrest in Louisville, Kentucky, on the second night of unrest, and among those arrested was a Kentucky state lawmaker. Representative Attica Scott was arrested by police and charged with first-degree rioting, failure to disperse, and unlawful assembly. According to WHAS-TV, she was arrested near the First Unitarian Church, where protesters were granted sanctuary from police action after the city mandated curfew to quell rioting and property damage. WHAS reported that Scott was arrested without incident. A journalist with the WFPL News posted a video of a woman being arrested and identifying herself as Scott. WFPL also reported that Scott's daughter, Ashanti, was arrested at the same time. Scott is the only black woman serving in the Kentucky state legislature and is known for proposing Breonna's Law, which would end the use of no-knock warrants throughout the state. Good. The law was named after Breonna Taylor, who was shot and killed by police during a raid in March. Police later said that they had announced themselves and knocked before entering Taylor's home. Protests and rioting erupted in the wake of the charges announced against one of the 3 officers in the raid. So, yep, great lawmaker. Good idea on Breonna's Law. I'm absolutely 100% in favor of people coming out and doing Breonna's Law. We don't need a no-knock warrant. The state doesn't need that much power. Never has, never will. But you're really going to hurt your case now that you're out there getting arrested for breaking the curfew that Andy Beshear put into place. So, we will see what happens with her. I'm sure that's not the last time we're going to hear that name. Let's move on from Fox News. Colin Kaepernick speaks on Breonna Taylor's shooting and indictment. Abolish the police. You knew that was coming. You knew that one was coming. From Daniel Canova. Former NFL quarterback Colin Kaepernick voiced his frustration on Wednesday over a grand jury's decision to indict one of the 3 police officers involved in the shooting death of Breonna Taylor with criminal charges. The white supremacist institution of policing that stole Breonna Taylor's life from us must be abolished for the safety and well-being of our people. Hashtag Breonna Taylor. Hashtag say her name. Hashtag abolish the police. Kaepernick wrote on Twitter. LeBron James also commented on the news. He wrote, so sorry on his Instagram page. And I don't follow LeBron James's Instagram page because don't give a fuck. I actually don't follow Kaepernick's either. But I follow Fox News's, and that's who brought this to my attention. A Jefferson County grand jury indicted Officer Brett Hankison with 3 counts of wanton endangerment in the first degree for his role in a drug operation that resulted in the death of Taylor, a 26-year-old black emergency medical worker. Former emergency medical worker. The charges against Hankison relate to the shots that were fired into the neighbor's home, not Taylor's death. So, and yes, we're going back up over details, but you knew that was coming from Kaepernick. You knew he was going to do something like that. You knew what was happening. Believe in something, even if it means sacrificing everything, including getting $1 million contract from Nike, man. Alright, let's keep going. We're not even going to say that for Monday, because that one was so fucking obvious. You knew it was coming. From Wave 3 News out of Louisville, fire crews extinguished 2-alarm fire in downtown Louisville. From Sarah Jackson, firefighters responded to a 2-alarm fire early Friday morning in downtown Louisville. The fire was reported in the 500 block of South 3rd Street around 1:30 a.m., according to Louisville Fire and Rescue Major Bobby Cooper. When fire crews arrived, they found heavy smoke coming from a 4-story commercial building. Cooper said the size of the building, volume of fire, boarded windows, and limited access to the inside were a few of the challenges firefighters faced. 70 firefighters and more than 15 firefighting apparatus were used to put out the flame, according to Cooper. It took firefighters 30 minutes to get the fire under control. No injuries were reported, and this is the best part of this news story right here. This last little paragraph right in the end. The cause of this fire is under investigation. That's kind of like last night. 2 police officers were shot. It's unclear whether or not the shootings were connected with the Breonna Taylor protest, even though they happened right on the grounds of the Breonna Taylor protest. It is unclear if the shootings were involved. This is your mainstream news. I mean, this is a local outlet too. We know what the cause of the fire was. Okay. Let me backtrack that there for just a second. We're probably about 95% sure what the cause of that fire was. But the news doesn't want you to know that. But good on them for getting it put out. And that's one of the things with these protests is, what if something happens to all these businesses? I saw this in Kenosha. All these historic buildings on top of it too, in the downtown area and beyond. that had all their windows boarded up. If somebody did manage to get into one of these places and get a fire going, your business, your building, this historic building is fucked. Now, yes, of course. Oh, well, we don't have to take care and replace the windows in the historic building. Yeah, well, once again, if somebody gets that Molotov off and in there, it's going to probably wind up worse. And as we saw when I was doing the live streaming coming down from the Uptown area, once one of the units in one of these big buildings, one of these big multi-unit buildings goes up, the rest of that building is fucked. There are a lot of these buildings that we saw in the live stream that the businesses are going to have to close because the structural damage of one unit is going to affect the rest of the units in the building. A lot of this stuff isn't going to be able to be saved. So, but good on the fire department for getting it in. Minimal damage, no injuries. That's great. All right, next one here from The Blaze. I got one more from The Blaze and one more from Fox, and then we'll move on to the Ginsburg news. Lowellville Church offers safe haven to protesters from police after curfew begins. White people told to get the fuck out. I love how it's The Blaze and they have to bleep everything. Which, I mean, after we talk about what's happening from YouTube at the end of the show, we'll realize that, hey, maybe I should be censoring too, but that's what we have DLive for, I guess. From Carlos Garcia, a church in Lowellville opened its doors and offered safe haven to protesters who would otherwise be arrested after a police curfew began. The First Unitarian Church of Lowellville posted a photograph of protesters from the first night of the riots in the city, but social media posts shows that they were doing the same on Thursday, a second night of protests. I got some pictures there of the people that are gathering up as the safe haven. In one expletive-ridden video reported from the church grounds, white people are being berated and exhorted to leave. White people have just been threatened with assault and kicked out of the church sanctuary grounds. Almost all press were demanded to leave as well, said the Twitter user who posted the video. Another video shows an interview with a member of the church who explains that the purpose of the sanctuary is to provide a safe space of love and compassion in the service of justice. So we've got some stills in the tweets. They're not showing me video, unfortunately. I would love to get the video out here. Here's a member of the First Unitarian Church explaining her motivation for offering sanctuary to the Lowellville protesters, and we are going to listen to that.
Could I have you introduce yourself and just say what the purpose of you offering sanctuary here to protesters is?
My name is Lynette Lau, and I'm a member of First Unitarian Church congregation. And our purpose in offering sanctuary to folks here this evening is to provide a safe space of love and compassion in the service of justice.
We'll listen to that again, because I couldn't hear it. I don't know how the volume was outgoing here.
Could I have you introduce yourself and just say what the purpose of you offering sanctuary here to protesters is?
My name is Lynette Lau, and I'm a member of First Unitarian Church congregation. And our purpose in offering sanctuary to folks here this evening is to provide a safe space of love and compassion in the service of justice.
I mean, it all sounds innocuous enough, but another video from outside the church shows a member explaining that protesters can find legal aid and refreshments as well.
Oh, this is First Unitarian Church of Louisville, and they have opened the church up as a sanctuary. On the emergency orders, houses of worship are exempt from the curfew. So we've opened this up or the church has opened this up as a sanctuary zone, a place to get refreshments, a place to get legal aid if they need.
We want to tell you that you can get the legal aid that you need. Police were reportedly waiting at church exits in order to arrest protesters. Oh, that one doesn't want to load. That's lame. There it goes. This one just says Compassion City, Breonna Taylor, Louisville, Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, they say Mojave is easy. I don't think anybody says it doesn't make I learned so much today.
Other reports on social media show that protesters were breaking windows and destroying property. So yeah, that's probably why they are popping up in here and waiting to arrest the people. And that's where we got that lawmaker arrested off of this. Because I'm sure that it wasn't just, oh, we're out here marching and saying her name. I'm sure that there was a lot more that went along with that, but innocent until proven guilty. All right, because we have more Fox News up here, let's turn the autoplay or the volume off so we don't get autoplay bleeding through. And let's keep going. Speaking of Fox News, Louisville protesters arrested near church that offered safe refuge. Report from David Arrow. At least 24 protesters were arrested Thursday night in Louisville during a second consecutive night of Breonna Taylor protests. They were arrested before 1 a.m. on charges including unlawful assembly. Don't we have a First Amendment to prevent a charge such as unlawful assembly? Anyway, failure to disperse and riot in the first degree. The demonstrators allegedly broke windows, damaged city buses, and tried to set fires. The First Unitarian Church of Louisville had opened its doors and offered its property as a safe haven to protesters who would otherwise be arrested by police after a police curfew began at 9 p.m. Officers blocked the exits of a church and several people were detained, including State Rep Attica Scott. At least 50 protesters remained outside the church's courtyard, with about 20 more inside the sanctuary. Some taunted officers in riot gear who stood nearby. According to one video posted on Twitter that was reportedly recorded on church grounds, one person yelled and threatened white people in the area to leave. White people have just been threatened with assault and kicked out of the church sanctuary grounds, one user wrote on the social media platform Thursday night. Almost all the press were demanded to leave as well. And that is, I am sorry to say this, there is a very, very deep strategic error about all of the protesters going and holing up in the church and wondering why they got arrested when they came back out. The police got nothing but time. Uh-oh. Lost the video there on Instagram for a second. The police got nothing but time, guys. I hate to tell you this, but they have nothing but time in this particular situation. So if you're all going to gather up in the same place and hide out, and they know that you're gathered up and hiding out in there, that was your first strategic error, was getting there. Because you're just asking to be arrested at that point, especially if you did the deed. Now, I don't agree, especially with the arrest for unlawful assembly. That should be fought in court, but once again, if you're going to try not to get arrested, then don't gather in the same place. And don't let everybody know where you're gathering. But that's what we got from that. And that's all that I have on the protest for right now. Let's move on into other parts of the news, including this one, which made me want to get out the popcorn and just sit back and watch, because this 2020 stuff is getting good. From the Huffington Post, which I rarely use on this show because they are just nothing but a repository of propaganda at this point. But I saw this and I had to laugh. The death of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg pushed me to join the Satanic Temple. From Jamie Smith, a guest writer. I am a 40-something attorney and mother who lives in a quiet neighborhood with a yard and a garage full of scooters and soccer balls. I often walk with my children and get ice cream and spend weekends hiking through a national park. I'm not the type of person who would normally consider becoming a Satanist, but these are not normal times. Like so many other women in the U.S., I learned of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg's passing. My first reaction was not grief, but fear. I fear that American citizens are inching closer to living in a theocracy or dictatorship, and that checks meant to prevent this from happening are close to eroding beyond repair. When Justice Ginsburg died, I knew immediately that action was needed on a scale we had not seen before. Our democracy had become so fragile that the loss of the last guardians of common sense and decency in government, less than 2 months before a pivotal election, has put our civil and reproductive rights in danger like never before, and so I have turned to Satanism. This is actually printed in the Huffington Post. Members of the Satanic Temple do not believe in the supernatural or superstition, in the same way that some Unitarians and some Jews do not believe in God. Satanic Temple members do not worship Satan, and most are atheists. They are not affiliated in any way with the Church of Satan. Instead, the Satanic Temple uses the devil as a symbol of rebellion. Just like other faiths, the Satanic Temple has a code that their members believe in deeply and use to guide their lives. These 7 fundamental tenets include that one should strive to act with compassion and empathy towards all creatures in accordance with reason, and that the struggle for justice is an ongoing necessary pursuit that should prevail over laws and institutions, and that one's body is inviolable. Inviolable. That is the first time I've ever seen that word in print. It seems like that should be how it's pronounced, but that's a really, really weird word. Subject to one's own will alone. Now, she is right that this is the Satanic Temple, which is pretty much a science-based, logic-based kind of thing. It's not going out for Satan worship, but to have that name hung on there, given the fact that, once again, of course, we're looking at the fact that she's, one of the reasons that she's using for going to this church is the fact that she's going out and hoping that she can sacrifice children on the altar of abortion. Probably doesn't bode well and is probably rife with propaganda coming from the other side. I would have chose probably any other church in the world if using abortion was going to be on the forefront. Short of the Church of Satan itself, if you really wanted to be taken seriously, given the satanic nature of child sacrifice, I would have chose anything else in the world. Scientology, as fucking kooky as those guys are, would have been a better choice than the Satanic Temple. But the headlines just write themselves after this one. So thank you, Jamie Smith, for that rousing. I don't even know what to call that, but it's hilarious. All right, from the Daily Wire, ABC News pushes false story about Amy Coney Barrett's Catholic Church inspiring The Handmaid's Tale. From Paul Bois. The story that Judge Amy Coney Barrett's charismatic Catholic group, People of Praise, inspired Margaret Atwood's dystopian novel The Handmaid's Tale, was perpetuated this week by ABC News, even after it was debunked. Speaking on Good Morning America on Thursday, correspondent Tom Lamas noted that Barrett is a devout Catholic with connections to a religious group that some might find problematic. A devout Catholic who clerked for the conservative Justice Antonin Scalia, Barrett is supported by religious conservatives and anti-abortion activists. Pro-choice groups have raised concern over how Barrett would vote on abortion issues. Planned Parenthood condemned the judge's nomination to the federal bench. Dude, I hate to tell you this, but if Trump had nominated or was planning on nominating Merrick Garland, Planned Parenthood would have condemned him. I hate to tell you this. Since she was appointed, she hasn't issued a ruling on abortion that hasn't questioned Roe v. Wade's overall precedent, but critics say she sided against rulings that strike down restrictions on abortions, noted Lamas, as reported by Newsbusters. Lamas then highlighted the controversy surrounding Barrett's connection to People of Praise. Also under the microscope, Barrett's linked to a small charismatic Christian community called People of Praise. The group telling ABC News it will neither confirm nor deny if Barrett is a current member, but she was listed as a former Board of Trustees member at the organization's Trinity School from 2015 to 2017, and has been named and photographed in since deleted online versions of the organization's magazine, Noted Lamas. According to its website, many of its members chose to make lifetime commitment to the community, a covenant, he continued. Members are assigned a personal advisor. Men were called heads and women were called handmaids, but those titles since changed to leaders amid speculation. The group may have inspired the novel and Emmy Award-winning drama, The Handmaid's Tale. Yeah, that was Emmy Award-winning pretty much based on the fact that it was woke. Finally, Lamas noted the fact that author Margaret Atwood said People of Praise was not a direct inspiration for her novel, which was a conglomeration of various sects and groups. ABC News did, however, leave open the possibility that People of Praise may have been a factor. But author Margaret Atwood saying that it's not accurate, telling ABC News that there were several inspirations, reported Lamas, but because her notes are locked in a closed library due to COVID, quote, I hesitate to say anything specific for the major influences on the book. I certainly did not confine myself to one sect or group, so I don't think that this is a thread that can be legitimately used in this way. They lied, straight out lied. And of course, they went back and made the retraction, but what do you know about the retraction? The headline is up there to make everybody outraged. And the retraction is buried way back there on page 6. So, yeah, good job on ABC News. All right, next one here comes from Reuters. Democrats prepare a bill limiting U.S. Supreme Court justice to terms to 18 years. From Andrew Chung. Democrats in the House of Representatives will introduce a bill next week to limit the tenure of U.S. Supreme Court justices to 18 years from current lifetime appointments, in a bid to reduce partisan warring over vacancies and preserve the court's legitimacy. I am in favor of this. I mean, this whole Death Watch thing that they do all the time is just gruesome beyond belief. Just absolutely gruesome. We're just sitting here waiting, watching to see who's going to die next. Is Ginsburg, is she going to make it or is she going to die? Is she going to make it this year? Does she want somebody else to appoint her, as the other story said? Or is she going to die? This is satanic. Sitting here watching these aged members of the court, waiting to see what they're going to do, if they're going to bump off or not. Now, of course, I'm sure that there are partisan reasons behind this too, limiting the scope of people like Amy Coney Barrett, who's 49, who could easily be on the court for 20 to 30 years. Kavanaugh, 20 to 30 years. Gorsuch, 20 to 30 years. To limit their scope, I'm sure that there is a partisan bent behind this, but it will eliminate the Death Watch. It will eliminate people sitting here watching the news stories to see that RBG had cancer again, that she had a bile duct cleaned out, that she was in for pneumonia, that she was in for this, that she was in for that, because that is gruesome as shit. But let's keep going from Reuters here. The new bill, seen by Reuters, would allow every president to nominate 2 justices per 4-year term, and comes amid heightened political tensions as Republican President Donald Trump prepares to announce his 3rd pick for the Supreme Court after the death on September 18th of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, with just 40 days to go until the November 3rd election. It would save the country a lot of agony and help lower the temperature over fights for the court that go to the fault lines of cultural issues and is one of the primary things tearing at the social fabric, said California U.S. Representative Ro Khanna, who plans to introduce the legislation on Tuesday along with Representatives Joe Kennedy and Don Beyer. Partly due to rising life expectancies, justices serve increasingly long tenures, on average now more than 25 years. Term limits for high court justices have for years had support from a number of legal scholars on both the right and the left. Several polls in recent years have also shown large majorities of the American public to support term limits. The bill, the Supreme Court Term Limits and Regular Appointments Act, is the first to try to get set Supreme Court term limits by statute. According to Gabe Roth, the executive director of Fix the Court, a judicial transparency group whose campaign for high court term limits has been gaining attention. Some legal observers, include those who favor term limits, say they must be accomplished through an amendment to the U.S. Constitution which has been interpreted as requiring life tenure for federal judges and justices. The bill seeks to avoid constitutional concerns by exempting current justices from the 18-year rule. Those appointed under term limits would become senior upon retirement and rotate to lower courts. That's perfectly consistent with their judicial independence and having lifetime salary and lifetime appointment, Khanna said. So, and that is, it's a lifetime appointment, and they're absolutely on the money, 25 to 30-year terms at a time, and Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and replacement to be named soon all have the opportunity to serve 25, 30-year terms. Absolutely do. I'm in favor of this. Now, I don't know, and the USA Today is going to touch on this as well. I'm not sure if this is going to require a constitutional amendment or not, because there is every possibility that it could. That's something we would have to look into. The USA Today, this is an opinion piece, writes, Supreme Court term limits do not require a constitutional amendment, from Gabe Roth. Americans waking up this week to yet another fight over the Supreme Court nominations are asking themselves, is there a better way? The answer, of course, is yes. A plan to fix the appointment process already has the support of a vast majority. 77% of Americans favor restrictions on the length of SCOTUS service versus 23% against, of the American people ending life tenure for future justices. What's more, this would not require amending the Constitution. Article 3 states judges and justices hold their offices during good behavior, which historically has been understood to mean that not until death do they and their robes part. But there's no particular reason the office referred to could not be interpreted as the office of federal judge. In other words, after a justice serves a reasonable amount of time on the high court, not 30 or 35 years, as has become the norm, she would continue to serve for as long as she wants, elsewhere in the judiciary. Wow. We're not even at the hour mark yet, and I'm tripping over words here, guys. She could continue to serve for as long as she wanted elsewhere in the judiciary since 1937, when a tweak in federal law smoothed the past for retired justices to do exactly this. 11 have chosen to continue their public service on lower courts, including Sandra Day O'Connor, who left the High Court in 2006, and David Soter, who retired in 2009. Remember that judicial life tenure is not handed down by decree on high. It exists in the United States because of a series of 18th century English monarchs, and here's the 18th century slave owners argument. On this and on the other side of the Atlantic were axing jurists whose decision they objected. That's it. Nearly every country whose constitution was written in the 20th century, not to mention 49 of the 50 United States, requires its top jurists to step down after a certain number of years or upon reaching a certain age. SCOTUS is an outlier. The big thing here, and this is one thing that I need to point out with my little Federalist heart, is that if we went back to the framers' original idea of the U.S. federal government, then it wouldn't matter who was on the court, and that is something that I just want to keep harping on off of this, because it shouldn't matter who's on the court to any of us that are watching this program. Interstate commerce was the sole function of the federal government. That's why the Senate is the one that confirms and the House has no say, because the Senate is supposed to be delegated from state legislatures, not direct popular vote. That's what it's supposed to be. The presidency is not supposed to have any bearing on your life specifically. But regardless to that, we are going to be doing a lot of things. We will need to be doing a lot of things in order to get the Supreme Court back to what it was supposed to be, and the federal government. A lot of amendments need to be made and or axed to get us back to where this country was supposed to be. But we don't have time for any of that here. We just have time to sit here and wonder what's going to happen in the next 39 days. So thank you, Gabe Roth, for that. I don't necessarily agree. I do think there would need to be a constitutional amendment to do this, but I'm willing to go forward on said constitutional amendment. All right. Let's move on here to a big story that came to me from Seawall over in the Discord, an autoplay that you can't hear because I turned the volume off because I knew this was coming. Let's see. Where's the headline? There we go. 7 military ballots cast for Trump found discarded in Pennsylvania. From Dominic Mastrangelo, I think is how you pronounce that. A handful of ballots cast by members of the military for President Trump were found discarded in Pennsylvania, the Justice Department announced on Thursday. Luzerne County District Attorney Stephanie Salavantis asked the DOJ and FBI to open an investigation into the discarded ballots on Monday following reports of potential issues with small number of mail-in ballots at the Luzerne County Board of Elections, the Department of Justice said in a release. At this point, we can confirm that a small number of military ballots were discarded, the DOJ said. Some of these ballots can be attributed to specific voters and some cannot. The DOJ initially said the discarded ballots consisted of 9 for Trump. A revised release said 7 of the 9 were for Trump, and that the contents of the other 2 were unknown. Trump won Luzerne County by nearly 20 percentage points in 2016. Pennsylvania is not one of several states that is automatically mailing ballot applications to all registered voters. White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany addressed the military ballots during a press briefing on Thursday. The president wants to get rid of mail-out voting, McEnany said. He said clearly that it could go either way. It could damage either candidate's chances because the system that is subject to fraud. She also cited a case in Greenville, Wisconsin, where 3 trays of mail were reportedly found in a ditch, local affiliate Fox 11 reported. Trump has publicly questioned the integrity of the vote-by-mail systems, alleging that they favor Democrats and lead to widespread fraud. Election officials and experts have said that there's no evidence to support Trump's claims. Here it is! Right there! There it is! So, yeah, that's... I don't understand where you think that this is something... And yes, the absentee ballot system has been used for years. And yet, we're seeing this in the absentee system. Military members, their votes being thrown out. And you do have to wonder how much of this doesn't get reported. I mean, it's got to get reported for there to be evidence for it to be out there. So yes, we are absolutely 100% seeing this. And I've got a counterpoint to this one from Politico, just to show how Politico is reporting this, essentially. So we're not going to spend a ton of time on this, but let's go ahead and see what they're writing. DOJ announcement on Pennsylvania ballot investigation baffles election experts. From Zach Montellaro. Election experts and lawyers are bewildered by a press release from the Department of Justice in which the department said it had begun an inquiry into a handful of military ballots in a northeastern Pennsylvania county. Most unusually, you say, the release revealed that the voters had cast their ballots for President Trump. You don't say! On Thursday afternoon, the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Middle District of Pennsylvania announced it had opened an inquiry into 9 ballots that were found discarded, without elaborating on what exactly that meant. Tossed. Gotten rid of. Put in the trash. Ignored. That's what that means. All 9 ballots had been cast for Trump, the release said. The Justice Department later issued an amended statement saying that in fact 7 had been cast for Trump and 2 had been resealed, meaning it could not be determined for whom the other ballots were cast. Resealed, and it could not be determined, you say. Interesting. The press releases did not specify any particular crime or allege any wrongdoing and said that election officials were cooperating in learning what went wrong. 9 ballots discarded. Statistically, most are for Trump. I wonder what could have gone wrong. Election experts were bewildered in the last few details, including within the press releases and the unorthodox manner in which they were announced, and were troubled by the fact that Justice Department said the ballots had been cast for the president. You're bewildered, you say. You have no idea how this could have happened. Interesting. It is hard to express how illegitimate the press release is. That's the problem, Justin Levitt, a professor at Loyola Law School, said in an interview, noting that it wasn't necessarily bad that the department was investigating. It is really improper for DOJ to be putting out a press release with partial facts, Levitt continued, and it is career-endingly improper to designate the candidate for whom the votes were cast. Really? Because I'm pretty sure that if they went the other direction, this would have been headline news on CNN. This would be all you'd be hearing. Louisville? You'd never hear about that again. Coronavirus? You'd never hear about that. All you would hear is that Trump officials are trying to rig the election for Trump because they discarded Biden ballots. So, yeah, spare me your fucking tears on this one. So, yeah, that's what they're trying to come up with this. And that's how they're trying to spin it. We have no idea how this could have happened. And you should never tell who the ballots were being cast for. All right, let's keep going off this one. Texas AG announces arrest and fraudulent mail-in ballot scheme in Democrat primary from Ryan Saavedra. Texas AG Ken Paxton announced Thursday that law enforcement officials had arrested 4 individuals for their alleged involvement in an illegal ballot harvesting scheme in the state's 2018 Democrat primary election. One of the people who was arrested was the Democrat who won the primary race. The 4 individuals, Charlie Burns, Dwayne Ward, Marlena Jackson, and Jackson's husband Shannon Brown, a Democrat who was serving as Gregg County's Precinct 4 commissioner, collectively stand accused of 134 different felony charges of election fraud and ballot tampering, Newsweek reported. If found guilty, each individual could face 6 months in jail to 99 years in prison. The charges filed against the individuals included engaging in organized election fraud, illegal voting, fraudulent use of an application for a mail-in ballot, unlawful possession of a mail-in ballot, tampering with governmental record, and election fraud. It is an unfortunate reality that the elections can be stolen outright by mail ballot fraud. Election fraud, particularly an organized mail ballot fraud scheme orchestrated by political operatives, is an affront to democracy and results in voter disenfranchisement and corruption at the highest level, Attorney General Paxton said in a statement. Mail ballots are vulnerable to diversion, coercion, and influence by organized vote harvesting schemes. This case demonstrates my commitment to ensuring Texas has the most secure elections in the country, and I thank Gregg County Sheriff and District Attorney for their continued partnership. Those who try to manipulate the outcome of elections in Texas must be held accountable. But there is no evidence of voter fraud anywhere. Just keep that in mind. If you ever try to allege the fact that this could possibly happen, there is no evidence that this has ever happened and ever will happen. There's no evidence. Just remember that. There's no evidence anywhere. All right, let's keep going here. We got just a few more, and then we will read the names of everybody who chatted in the live chat. I've got everything written down here ready to go. So, if you're just lurking right now and you want to get the thank you from me at the end of the show, it's time to throw those stickers up if you're on DLive, throw those emotes up if you're over on Twitch, and throw those messages out if you're over on YouTube. And if you're on Facebook, get into one of those other 3, because that's the only way that I can see you in the live chat. Let's keep going here from The Blaze. Democrats' attacks on the Electoral College seem to be working. Share of Americans who want it abolished surges. From Chris Fields. Democrats have been loudly clamoring for an end to the Electoral College for the past 2 decades. Their demands began in earnest when Republican George W. Bush defeated Democrat Al Gore in the 2000 election. That was the first time since 1888 that the winner of the Electoral College lost the popular vote. Since then, the cries to abolish the Electoral College have grown only more shrill, especially following President Trump's win in 2016 over Hillary Clinton despite losing the popular vote. For example, just this week, CNN's Don Lemon was caught saying that we need to blow up the entire system should the Senate confirm Trump's forthcoming nomination to the Supreme Court to fill the vacancy left by the death of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. A key step in blowing up the system, Lemon said, was to get rid of the Electoral College because minority in this country decides who the judges are and they decide who the president is. Is that fair? Today's attacks on the system established by the Founding Fathers were not new or unique, but they are working. according to a poll published by Gallup on Thursday. Outlier they seem to be. Gallup asked voters if they would prefer to amend the Constitution and select the president by popular vote or keep the current Electoral College. 61% of Americans would prefer electing the president via popular vote. Just 38% want to keep the current system. A vast majority of Democrats and the strong majority of independents backed the popular vote, while just 23% of Republicans felt the same. Though the current support for the popular vote is not at an all-time high, for the Gallup poll, 62% of Americans in 2011 held that view. It is reflective of the growing movement to jettison the Electoral College. Since President Trump's victory 4 years ago, in 2016, 49% of voters wanted to move to the popular vote, while 47% supported the system. We have today, in 2019, those numbers jumped to 55% and 43% respectively. Broken down by party, the GOP has consistently been less supportive of the popular vote than Democrats because they seem to understand the reason that it's there. Now, I do see, with all of this going, with all these attacks coming, an end to the Electoral College in our lifetime. But that is going to pull disenfranchised voters out of California, out to the polls. I'm sure there are a lot of people in California that just don't go because they know their voice isn't going to get heard. It's going to pull a lot of disenfranchised voters out of places like here in Wisconsin, out, and get them to the polls. It'll pull a lot more Democrats in Texas out to the polls. So it is hit or miss as to where this is going to go. But once again, I don't support it because, one of the things we're seeing off this, and something that I've said from the beginning, when they started screaming about the popular vote versus the Electoral College, is the fact that if you want to win the Electoral College, spread out. Don't all gather in New York City and Los Angeles. Spread out. There's a lot of country here for you to spread out into. But one of the big fears for people on the left is that if people start leaving the echo chamber and learning what a good hard day's work is once they spread out, and property rights, once they start buying and not renting, they're going to start realizing they want to keep a lot more of that tax money. And they want their voices heard against what starts happening in the echo chamber of Los Angeles. So that's what we'll see off of this here. I'm very interested to see where this goes, and especially with the Interstate Compact, what that does to everything as well. That seems like a workaround, but we'll see. All right, next one here from Fox News. Durham assumed parts of John Huber's Clinton Foundation review. Source from Brooks Singman. Aspects of U.S. Attorney John Huber's investigation into the Clinton Foundation have been assumed by U.S. Attorney John Durham as part of his review into the origins of the Russia probe, Fox News has learned. A source familiar with Durham's investigation told Fox News on Thursday that parts of what Huber was investigating in 2017 involving the Clinton Foundation have been incorporated for Durham's investigation. In November of 2017, then AG Jeff Sessions directed Huber, the U.S. Attorney for Utah, and other senior prosecutors to evaluate certain issues involving the sale of Uranium One and other dealings related to the Clinton Foundation. Sessions tapped Huber after requests by congressional Republicans who had been calling for the appointment of a special counsel to review the matters. Huber was also tasked with reviewing the FBI's handling of the Clinton email probe, including allegations that the Justice Department and FBI policies or procedures were not followed. It has been unclear for years the status of Huber's investigation, but another source told Fox News Thursday that Huber has faced the mounting criticism from the Justice Department and the White House over his progress. There are folks that are aware that the fact that Huber has not done much, and there has been criticism at the Justice Department and the White House. The source said folks that have been concerned about what he did or didn't do, many of them feel that Huber did not dig deep enough or work hard enough. The source added that many are very concerned about why there hadn't been more done. The New York Times on Thursday first reported that Durham had focused attention on the Clintons and said that Durham has sought documents and interviews about how federal law enforcement officials handled an investigation into allegations of political corruption at the Clinton Foundation. Yeah, this is going to get juicy, and I actually have that New York Times article archived here. I don't think we're going to need to go too far into this. Actually, let's touch on that for just a little bit because they're going into review material at this point. Let's see what the New York Times, a former newspaper, had to say about this one. In politically charged inquiry, Durham sought details about scrutiny of Clintons. From Adam Goldman, William K. Roshbaum, and Nicole Hong. From the beginning, John H. Durham's inquiry into the Russia investigation has been politically charged. President Trump promoted it as certain to uncover a deep state plot against him. Attorney General Bill Barr rebuked the investigators under scrutiny, and he and Mr. Durham publicly second-guessed an independent inspector general and traveled the globe to chase down conspiracy theories. It turns out that Mr. Durham also focused attention on certain political enemies of Mr. Trump, the Clintons. Mr. Durham, the U.S. Attorney in Connecticut, assigned by Mr. Barr to review the Russia inquiry, has sought documents and interviews about how federal law enforcement officials handled an investigation around the same time into allegations of political corruption at the Clinton Foundation, according to people familiar with the matter. Mr. Durham's team members have suggested to others that they are comparing the two investigations as well as examining whether investigators in the Russia inquiry flouted laws or policies. It was not clear whether Mr. Durham's investigators were similarly looking for violations in the Clinton Foundation investigation, nor whether the comparison would be included or play a major role in the outcome of Durham's inquiry. Yeah, I'm very curious to see what happened in the Clinton probe, what's going on with this, and just what's going on with the government. Because there's so much opacity in the government. And I realize that we do have to have some stuff classified for this, for the reason of safety off of this, but not everything has to be classified. There should be a lot more transparency. We should be seeing a lot more of this. And we should be getting some of these people out, like the Clintons, like the Pelosi's, like the Barrs. And I like what Barr's doing, but he's been there forever. And replacing them with a lot more first-term people. That's just the end of it right there. Term limits, no. Make the primary process easier so more people run? Absolutely. Get some more transparency into this. Get more people like Kim Klacik into office. There's way better things we could be doing with this. All right, a little bit more investigation news. FBI official on Mueller team said Flynn prosecution had get Trump attitude. Collusion probe was not there. From Brooke Singman. I got a back-to-back pair from Fox News here, so. An FBI official who served on Robert Mueller's team said he believed the special counsel's prosecution of former White House National Security Advisor Michael Flynn was part of an attitude to get Trump, and that he did not wish to pursue a Trump-Russia collusion investigation as it was not there, and considered it to be a dead end. FBI agent William J. Barnett made the comments during an interview on September 17th at the Justice Department before Assistant AG for the Eastern District of Missouri, Jeffrey Jensen, who was tapped by AG Barr to review the case against Flynn. Jensen had joined the U.S. Attorney John Durham's team in his review of the origins of the Trump-Russia probe. Those comments have surfaced in a new government document. Fox News says. Fox News reviewed Barnett's FBI 302, which was filed by the U.S. government early Friday, as a part of the Flynn case. Barnett, during his interview, detailed his work at the FBI and his assignment to the Bureau's original case against Flynn and former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort. Barnett said Flynn investigation was assigned the codename Crossfire Razor, which was part of the Crossfire Hurricane investigation, the Bureau's codename for the original Trump-Russia probe. And there are some of the documents. Barnett told investigators that he thought the FBI's Trump-Russia probe was opaque and with little detail concerning specific evidence of the criminal events. Barnett thought the case theory was a supposition on supposition, the 302 stated, and added that the predication of the Flynn investigation was not great and that it was not clear what the persons opening the case wanted to look for or at. And once again, I just want to point out the fact that Kamala Harris is trying to open an investigation into the Durham probe, which is an investigation into the Mueller probe, which is an investigation into Trump-Russia collusion. So it is, once again, Let them investigate themselves, because this is an investigation into an investigation into an investigation. Wrap your mind around that investigationception. And yes, I don't believe there was anything else there. And from everything that I've seen out of this, and I've read the Mueller report, there definitely was the get Trump attitude go to this, and they had nothing. All right. Source of Steele dossier was investigated by FBI for Russian contacts, Barr says, also from Brooks Singman. The primary source of the anti-Trump dossier, authored by ex-British intelligence agents, Christopher Steele, was the subject of an FBI counterintelligence investigation from 2009 to 2011 for suspected contact with Russian intelligence officers, Fox News has learned. Attorney General Barr penned a letter to Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Lindsey Graham on Thursday, responding to a request as part of the panel's review into the origins of the Russia probe. In connection with the committee's investigation of these matters and ongoing hearings, you have been asking us to accelerate this process and to provide any additional information relating to the reliability of the work on Christopher Steele and the so-called Steele dossier, as long as its release would not compromise U.S. Attorney John Durham's ongoing criminal investigation, Barr wrote. A footnote for the IG's report contained information, which up until now has been classified and redacted, bearing on the reliability of the Steele dossier. Barr wrote, the FBI has declassified the relevant portion of the footnote number 334, which states that the primary subsource was the subject of an FBI counterintelligence investigation from 2009 to 2011 that assessed his or her contacts with suspected Russian intelligence officers. Barr added that at his request, the FBI has prepared a declassified summary of certain information from counterintelligence investigation into the source, which he has shared with the committee. I have consulted with Mr. Durham, who originally brought this information to my attention in the course of his investigation, and he has informed me that the disclosure of the information will not interfere with his criminal investigation, Barr wrote, adding that he alerted Director of National Intelligence John Ratcliffe to certain classified information in possession of the intelligence community, which bears upon FBI's knowledge of the reliability of the dossier. Mr. Durham confirms the disclosure of that information will not interfere with his investigation, and the department otherwise defers to DNI concerning the handling of this information, Barr said. Durham was appointed by AG Barr last year to investigate the origins of the FBI's Russia probe, shortly after Special Counsel Robert Mueller completed his years-long investigation into whether or not the campaign colluded with the Russians to influence the 2016 presidential election. So, yeah, that information is going to be coming out, and hopefully we get a chance to have a look at that as well. Definitely. More transparency to the American people. All right, two more here. Senate report links Hunter Biden to prostitution or human trafficking ring from Bruce Golding. This comes from Midget B over in the Discord server, along with many other people over on Twitter. Hunter Biden allegedly sent thousands of dollars to people who appear to be involved in the sex industry, according to Wednesday's report, released by Senate Republicans. The report claims unspecified records show that Biden has sent funds to non-resident alien women in the U.S. who are citizens of Russia and Ukraine, who have subsequently wired funds they have received from Hunter Biden to individuals located in, you guessed it, Russia and Ukraine. The records also note that some of these transactions are linked to what appears to be an Eastern European prostitution or human trafficking ring. The allegations are contained in a footnote to a section of the report that details potential criminal concerns and extortion threats involving Hunter Biden and other members of the Biden family. Oh, this is juicy. Right in time for the debates, too. You do have to wonder how Joe is going to get out of the debates at this point, because we're getting to this point where more of this stuff is coming out, and it's going to be impossible to hide this. Now, of course, you know the fact that the mainstream media is going to softball the questions to Joe Biden to make sure that he doesn't have to answer to any of this, but this is going to get harder and harder the more and more of this comes out. What do you have to say about your son that's addicted to blow, nailed his brother's widow, and is colluding with Russia in the form of hookers who are sending money back to fucking Russia? There's your Russia collusion right there. Oh, this is great. This is awesome. This is amazing. And this is all fair game coming up for a debate. It doesn't matter what the moderators say. I hope the moderators ask something about this, and I know that they won't. But I hope this comes up. I really do. Because I want to see Joe Biden glitch out. And I have to wonder, speaking of the debate, I want to put this out there here. Do you think that Joe Biden is Casey at the batting right now? Hear me out on this. I mean, he did somewhat okay in the Democrat primary debates, but he's just said so much stupid shit in public from every point after that. Do you think it's an act? Do you think that he's going to come in and drop the hammer on Trump after acting like he was dim and demented? That's the conspiracy theory I have going on in my head. That's my tinfoil. I know it's a little bit out there, but that's my tinfoil for the whole thing. Oh, this is great. Right before the debate, too. Right before this. Records on file with the committees do not directly confirm or refute these individual reports, the report says. However, they do confirm that Hunter Biden sent thousands of dollars to individuals who have either been involved with transactions consistent with possible human trafficking, an association with the adult entertainment industry, or potential association with prostitution, or why not all three? All right. So that's what we're going to see off this one here. I got one more, just a little quick hitter to touch on. So if you want to get that last minute message in so you get your name read at the live stream. Wow. Can't talk. Which is weird because I talk for a living. If you want to get that last minute message read on the air or your name read up there and you haven't been in the chat, go ahead and get that in there. As for those of you over on DLive, I want to see those stickers, so flood those stickers in now. Last one here that I have is coming from Matt Christensen over on Twitter. Susan's pre-election meddling engaged. Nobody wants this crap, Team YouTube, YouTube creators, Susan Wojcicki. Stop making it harder for people to succeed on your platform before you MySpace yourself. So, Matt got it. I didn't get this email either, so it must be just going to bigger creators at this point. Matt Christensen got this email from YouTube. Changes to age-restricted content. Hi, Matt Christensen. We are contacting you to let you know that starting on September 22nd, 2020, we are expanding our age restriction efforts as part of our ongoing commitment to keeping YouTube creators and viewers safe. We'll be expanding the use of automated systems along with our team of expert reviewers to apply age restrictions to videos that aren't appropriate for all ages. With greater safeguards in place, you may see videos on your channel placed behind age restriction, which limits the content to viewers who are at least 18 years old. We anticipate little to no impact to your video's monetization, as age-restricted videos are likely not suitable for all advertisers and will have already been rated as limited or ineligible for ads. As always, you can appeal an age restriction if you believe this was applied in error. We're also adjusting the way our age restriction works off YouTube, prohibiting age-restricted videos to be viewable when embedded on most third-party sites. Users that click on an age-restricted video on another website will be redirected to YouTube, where they will be only able to view the content when logged in. This will help ensure that no matter where the content is viewed, videos hosted by YouTube will only be viewable by the appropriate audience. And that last part is very important. So, for the most part, when I put my videos out, when I live stream to Twitter, for example, and for Facebook, I just live stream to their live streaming platform. I don't fuck around and dick around with the fact that, okay, well, we'll upload this to YouTube, then we'll put the link to YouTube into Twitter. There's no time for that, especially with everything else that I have to do. I just stream it to Periscope, and then it's available for posterity and all those on those sites. But what they're doing is they're, like for Christensen, when he does his solo videos, if they get age restricted, which I have a feeling that a lot of them are going to get age restricted, you can't go and put them on the Facebook because it'll just redirect the site. The site will redirect to go back to YouTube to sign back in. And if you're doing that on Facebook mobile, that is a clunky process at best. That is limiting the ability for Christensen to reach an audience. Like I said, for me, everything that I do on YouTube is going to be age restricted no matter what. But for the most part, you're going to be going directly to YouTube to see it. Because I stream to the other platforms exclusively. Or inclusively, I should say. This is going to affect the way that bigger channels make money, and this is going to affect the way that people like myself, like Steven, like the R-Rated Conservative, go forward with making money, especially since Steven and the R-Rated Conservative have both been invited to the partner program. I have not, because I'm still, 776 subs away from the partner program. Like I said on the Ed Talk a few weeks ago, if you guys do get me to 2,000 subs before 2021, I'm going to run for president in 2024. But yeah, that's going to make it harder for my videos to get shared out, for anything that I do to get shared out, because I like to say that little F word on the air. Styx likes to say that little F word on the air. Matt likes to say that little F word on the air. And that's going to be an algorithmic way to make sure that none of these videos gets picked up. Matt went on a thread to say, just to emphasize how big of a joke this is, there's no actual age verification, of course. It's just self-reported. Team YouTube does not care about preventing minors from accessing adult material. They just want tools to suppress views that they don't like, which means that, once again, these videos, especially the solo videos, can't get shared out to a Facebook post. Matt has a video, it's probably one of my favorites, on guns and cats. He goes through and reviews a YouTube video talking about guns as scary cats is what they are. So good guns, like your little 9mm, is a good cat. And scary cats, these awful assault-styled and these black composite piece rifles that he has out there. And Matt says that in his house, there is the biggest and scariest kind of cat in every single room of the house. Kind of similar to this house, actually. And pops onto the screen with an FN 2000. And cocks it on the screen. I'm willing to bet that that video is about to get age restricted, which means that I couldn't put the video up on Twitter to say, hey, this is what this guy has to say about guns and cats. Because you'd get up on... Now, yes, I can post it, but anybody who tries to play it is going to have to go through Twitter's... Well, if they do it on desktop, it wouldn't be too hard because they would just automatically default to going into YouTube. But to do it on mobile, they would go through Twitter's internal browser to go and sign back in order to be able to see this. So yes, this is suppressing voices. So watch for that coming up in the future, and thanks to everybody who views this content over on Twitch and DLive, because this will be unaffected on those two platforms. And that's going to be it for the news. And the last thing that we do is we go through and we read the live chat. So let me get the scene changed up here. And thank everybody who chatted throughout the week. Oops. No, we do want the news feed back up. Never mind. I was going to put my solo back up, but then you're not going to be able to see the live chat, which is the big point of this. So, coming up here, starting with today, we have Sully Blue in here with a sticker party coming up in the beginning. A lot of cool stickers off of this. He says that Mose is king. I don't know what that means. We've got Dab of Cannabis up here with the skeleton sticker. Ron Helton with some of his stickers. Looks like we got a little bit of a conversation going back and forth between the couple of them. Seawall popped in for just about in time for me to start reading about the article that he posted up here. We have Unsatiable, who pointed out that, yes, I apologize, I forgot to change the title. I will do that on the back end. So, I apologize for that. Let's see, and Dabo will round us out for the rest of the night, through the rest of the week. On Monday, we had Ron Helton, Spartan 0000, Superior, popped in. Work 15, that was a new name. Thanks for coming and checking us out. Wyatt from The Breakdown with Birkenhoff checked us out on Monday. Sully was here. Furkan HDT 121 was in here doing a little bit of self-promo. I hope that you got the invitation to the Discord so you can come in, and I'll talk to you about doing some promo for you. If you want to get on, get interviewed, or something else. I'm looking for panelists, and you can self-promote yourself that way. So I don't necessarily mind if you do it in the chat. I know Spartan was a little bit against that. I don't necessarily mind it, but keep it to a minimal if you can. And Steve Ignoramus popped in for a little bit on Monday as well. On Tuesday we had Ron Helton, Spartan. Furkan HDT 121 popped in again. I had an M and Lotus, that was a new name, and a U Lucas 251048. I believe those were our Turkish friends that popped in and threw flags up. Wednesday we had the Chill Anarchist, Ron Helton, Miami 1984. Thick Zeke was in here to try and throw some, try and get me to bait me into an argument or something in the live chat. I get a lot of those over on Twitch, trying to bait into an argument. Sully was here, and Yama Fago popped in for just a second at the beginning of his shift, so thanks for coming and checking us out. And on Thursday, we had Ron Helton, Spartan, Miami 1984, Sully Blue, and Seawall rounding us out for the week. So, as many of you who listen on the audio platform may have noticed, I am caught back up with the Red and Ed Show and Ed Talk over on the audio platform. I will be posting this week's episodes of Contemporary on the audio platform this weekend, in addition to a large backlog of bonus content that I am way behind on and that I need to get added to, because so many great creators this week, or these past few months, have invited me onto their channels. So I want to make sure they get the recognition they deserve too. So look for that. Look for the bonus content on the audio platform. Otherwise, we will be back here on Monday. There is no Ed Talk this weekend. I am still going to see if we can change the format of that a little bit and get it to be like it was last weekend. But there is no Ed Talk this weekend. So with that, we will see you back here on Monday for the Red and Ed Show, or more Contemporary, whichever you prefer. Until then, I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. See you next week. Take care.